Welcome to the Cloud Pod, where the forecast is always cloudy. We talk weekly about all things AWS, GCP, and Azure. We are your hosts,
Justin,
Jonathan,
Ryan,
and Peter.
Episode 217, recorded for June 28th, 2023. The Cloud Pod whispers its secrets to Azure OpenAI. Good evening, Matthew and Jonathan. How's it going?
Hey, Justin. Welcome back.
Thank you. Appreciate it. You guys did an okay job while I was gone. And I only say that because I missed last week. Because I was too busy. But yeah, you guys had some struggles with the recording schedule.
Turns out getting 4 people's schedules, or 3 people in this case's schedules all aligned, doesn't always work very well.
Yeah, just think about that when you guys want to, do a coup to kick me out of the podcast. But you have to do all that yourselves, and you value me more after this. That's how I have to think about it. It's job security.
I mean, reading each line also, each headline is also pretty difficult. So
yeah, you're kind of good at it over time, where you just, it kind of flows. But yeah, when you first start doing it, it's very much reading off the bullets, and then you get better with more practice. So maybe we should make you read more of them, Matthew.
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Hard no. Hard pass.
All right. Well, it's great. I had a great time. I was glad to get away and not worry about the podcast for 2 weeks, and come back and be back in the saddle now. So back to normal schedule. All right. First up, Vault, HashiCorp Vault, in that matter. 114 is bringing a couple of new features that I thought was good to highlight. We don't typically talk about their releases, but they finally have released ACME for PKI, which allows you to use Vault to manage your TLS certificates using the ACME protocol. For those of you who don't know what ACME is, if you've ever seen Let's Encrypt and all the magic that happens behind the scene, that's all ACME. The email process, the DNS validation system, that's all based on ACME, being able to automatically create certificates on the fly, which is something you will probably be doing a lot of in your infrastructure if you're doing TLS 1.2 certification through your system, PCI, or any of the other major things. A couple other little things in this release. AWS roles are now supported as part of Vault. Vault will now manage those roles, making it easier to grant access to your apps. Apparently, it has improved its performance, so you can deliver those Vault secrets faster than ever to the hacker. And there's many, many bug fixes, of course, as well. They consider this a significant release, the number of features. And if you're using Vault, time to upgrade.
Yeah, it's really cool. The ACME implementation is really nice. There's a bunch of tools out there. CertBot's one of them that I've used with Let's Encrypt. It's super nice to have a off-the-shelf tool now instead of kind of, I'm still going to call it hacking something together, because although console template works with Vault, I don't think it's a particularly nice implementation. And so using something like CertBot is going to be really nice.
I'm just saying, you just told me my setup that I built for ACME and Vault like 4 years ago was not very good and hacked together, because we pretty much did what you just said. But it worked.
Yeah, I've been working with console template and Vault recently, and it just doesn't seem right, the way the integration works. It's so ugly.
It does feel like a little bit of a bolt-on from what I've seen in past experiences with it. So I feel your pain.
Yeah, having it be native is definitely key.
Indeed. Well, moving on to AWS features this week. A couple weird ones, actually. So first up, for all your UI builders out there who listen to the podcast, which is probably none of you, if you're using AWS Amplify and you have a UI builder Figma capability where your UI UX team builds all your UIs there, you now have a plugin that makes Amplify work natively with Figma. This will make it easier to empower your design and development teams to seamlessly collaborate with the Figma file. This plugin with Amplify UI Kit allows you to easily theme your components, upgrade to the new UI Kit versions, and generate and preview React code from your designs directly in Figma itself. Go from design to code in seconds and have that native integration. I went and set this up today because I had never actually used Figma, although I heard lots about it. So I signed up for my free account. I signed in for the plugin for Amplify, and then I remembered I don't know how to use Amplify. So it didn't go so well for me, but I'm going to keep tackling it, because one thing I'm not very good at is front-end development, and anything that makes me better as a front-end developer would be a plus.
Yeah, I was going to say, the extent of my user interface is usually just a REST interface and telling people to use curl or something. But yeah, Figma looks really nice. It's great for prototyping.
Yeah. I've used some other prototyping solutions in the past that I liked as well, but this one has a nice collaboration layer, which I hadn't seen before, so that's kind of cool. And then even it has integration to Slack and to Teams, so as you're working in a team situation and you go move a box, it'll notify you that Jonathan just moved the box and time to update your React code. So it's kind of neat.
That's nice. Yeah, I think the last time I really did any serious UI work was probably like Visual Basic about 1999.
Yeah,
so
that's probably about where I did it too. It was like, I don't like this front end thing. I learned HTML. Yeah. I loved HTML. Then CSS hit, and I was like, oh yeah, this is not good. Then it just got worse from there. JavaScript came, and I realized very quickly that beyond blink tags, I was not a good HTML developer. So.
Plus, the Microsoft front page really always did well.
Oh, front page. I remember front page. How to send a hello world page into, a 300K document full of junk.
So I remember doing that with Word. You'd save the Word document as HTML and it'd be like a meg, and you're like, why? This makes no sense. And then I remember front page, and then I did Dreamweaver as well when I was forced to do web things. So I never really got into Cold Fusion, though. That's the one that I sort of missed that moment for some reason. I don't fully know. I think maybe because, again, it veered into JavaScript territory, and I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that, and just kept working on back end. So.
It's a shame Ryan's not here, actually, because Yahoo were great pioneers of building UIs with JavaScript.
They were. He's unfortunately sick, though, so he's not here to cough on us as we record the podcast. So let him mend without his croaky voice. On Friday, I was on a call with him, and he started talking, and I visibly cringed every time he spoke. This next feature is definitely a Ryan special. So the AWS Transfer Family now delivers logs in a structured JSON format across all resources, including servers, connectors, and workflows for all protocols, including SFTP, FTPS, FTP, and AS2. The new format allows you to easily parse and query your logs using CloudWatch Log Insights. ACME discovers JSON formatted fields. You also benefit from improved monitoring with support for CloudWatch Contributor Insights, which requires a structured log format to track top users, total number of users, and their ongoing usage. In addition to this, apparently the AS2 cloud certification seal of approval was granted by the Drummond Group. If you know anything about AS2 or Drummond Group, you now care about that, and I'm sure you are just ecstatic about that. It's now supported at AWS Transfer Family. I'd just like to mention that little tidbit here too as another announcement. A full blog post on that one, by the way, about their Drummond Group certification. So something important, I guess, for somebody.
I have never heard of Drummond Group certification.
Most likely in the government.
Mm.
I read this headline. I looked at it and I went, wow, I've set up Transfer Family at least 2 or 3 times. Set up all the logs and never have actually looked at them to know that it was not in JSON format. I'm kind of curious what it was.
I mean, it's kind of one of those services that you just kind of set it and it works. It's probably just clean log files. Just every entry is a log file, a connection from something, transfer from something. Probably a very basic text file. If it was really anything before this.
At least you don't have to use a SFTP service to copy off the logs to somewhere else now.
That is nice. I appreciate that. For those of you who don't know what AppSync is, I have a feature for you this week, and that is as an abstraction for AppSync. You can now use the AWS Serverless application model with the new AWS Serverless GraphQL API resource abstraction, making AWS AppSync a managed service that makes it easier to build scalable APIs that connect applications to both. And now you don't need to know what any of the thing means and just make it work with APIs. So you're welcome. If you don't know what those are, you now have abstractions to abstract it away.
So they added it to CloudFormation and to SAM?
Apparently, that's what they did. And wrote a blog post about it. So thanks, Amazon. We really appreciate that. Amazon, of course, is in the midst of many existential crises right now between unionization, antitrust, etc. But they want you to know that they really do care about generative AI as well in the middle of all these things. And to prove it, they're going to commit to you $100 million in investment. The new program they're launching will help customers successfully build and deploy generative AI solutions. This will help customers successfully envision, design, and launch new generative AI products, services, and processes. I'd like to point out that they have 25 years of deep investment in developing AI technologies for customers, and it's just part of AWS's overall generative AI strategy to bring the technology to customers and partners around the world. There's a quote here from Matt Garman, Senior Vice President of Sales and Marketing and Global Services at AWS. Amazon has more than 25 years of AI experience, and more than 100,000 customers have used AWS AI and ML services to address some of the biggest opportunities and challenges. Now, customers around the globe are hungry for guidance about how to get started quickly and securely with generative AI. Generative AI Innovation Center is part of our goal to help organizations leverage AI by providing flexible and cost-effective generative AI services for the enterprise, alongside our team of generative AI experts to take advantage of all this new technology has to offer. Together with our global community partners, we're working with business leaders across every industry to help them maximize the impact of generative AI in their organizations, creating value for their customers, employees, and the bottom line.
I saw Adam Slipsky say that we're only 3 steps into a 10K race. And of course, he would say that because what else has he got?
I mean, 3 steps is probably generous. I mean, yes, they had a lot of AI and ML features, but they didn't have anything as revolutionary as ChatGPT. So generative AI is where all the hotness is right now, and they are definitely lagging behind just a little bit.
What's Alexa considered? Is it?
It's a bot.
Is it just a bot then at that point is it considered, versus any level of AI?
I mean, it does have some AI. It has to interpret what you're saying and has to be able to tie into it. But anyone who's ever written an Alexa app knows how limited its ability to recognize things is, and it doesn't tie that into an LLM model where it can go off into its own heavy duty devices. It does require some structure for certain things in the bot and the apps. But maybe that'll be something that can change in the future where you don't have to be quite as verbose in your app definitions.
Yeah, Alexa is a pretty good service, but it's obviously very limited in scope. So that's a natural language processor for apps. Certainly doesn't have the knowledge that OpenAI does in it, but it was never designed to. I think it is very early on. I will say, 3 steps into a 10K race may be an understatement because they I kind of feel like they dropped the ball a little bit. But at the same time, taking something like ChatGPT and turning it into a product that you can sell, it's going to be very difficult because it's just got so much data on so many things. Applying the guardrails you need to provide a limited set of functionality for an application is going to be super hard. And so, maybe we'll have to meet in the middle somewhere. But I think things are going to change very quickly, and within the next 6 to 12 months, there'll be the even better next version of something like ChatGPT, probably from Google, like the next evolution of that type of technology. And I think ChatGPT won't be the leader for a long time.
Yeah, integrating into products is really all about the guardrails, I feel like, and making it give the customers or a valid response and something that's actually meaningful. Because I played with it a few times and in tandem, like with work related things, and can give you very weird answers. You're like, wait a second, we don't want to tell our customers that went horribly.
Yeah, the hallucination problem definitely needs to go, especially if you want to actually have it be the interface to people and for your business. It's more work needs to be done. I think Microsoft are probably a little early taking this to market, but they need to get to get the money back. OpenAI needed to get a revenue stream going. It kind of makes sense, but yeah, there'll be some iterations to actually turn it into a product that we can sensibly integrate with our own applications, I think.
Yeah, they definitely needed that feedback, and they were able to get a lot of buzz by being first adopters to market on it. So there's a good move on their part. We use Bard quite a bit now in the show notes when I can't be bothered to read an article that I don't want to read, but it'll do a nice job summarizing it. But I can see the more of those things get embedded into Office and into workspaces and the things that we use on a day-to-day basis, the more and more power those things will have for us. I still think ChatGPT is a bit of a hobby, but it's coming along quite nicely. All right. Well, while I was on vacation, Google shocked the world for anybody who knew nothing about Google. For those of us who've watched Google for a long time, we're not really that surprised. Apparently, Google Domains, the registrar service from Google, is shutting down. And instead of just shutting it off and turning it off like they do all the other Google services, they've actually sold the entire business and assets to Squarespace, of all people. They've entered into a definitive asset purchase agreement with Google, whereby Squarespace will acquire the assets associated with the Google Domains business. This includes approximately 10 million domains hosted on Google Domains spread across millions of customers. If you can't make money on 10 million domains, I don't know what you're doing wrong, Google. Google launched registrar business in 2014 as a bit of a proponent of HTTPS and top-level domains, and the service just exited beta in 2022. So yeah, there you go. Can't wait till they sell Google Cloud to a third party in a definitive agreement. Can't wait for that day to happen. But yeah, if you're using Google Domains, you can no longer use Google Domains in the future. It'll all integrate directly into Squarespace, who is a very prominent podcast sponsor, but not a sponsor of this show. they can fix that anytime by reaching out to us. But they definitely a weird move. I'm not entirely sure why they sold to Squarespace versus somebody like Hover or one of the other big registrar services, but that's where we're at. So congratulations to Squarespace on getting Google's very googly domain service, and best of luck to them.
How bizarre. I mean, I understand partnering with companies like Elasticsearch, Elastico, or Grafana, and providing that type of service as a sort of partner managed service in the cloud. But something as fundamental as domain registration for cloud users seems really weird to me that they would sell that and basically resell through a partner something so critical to running SaaS services.
Well, and it's such a fundamental thing to getting workspaces up and running. Like, oh, I want to create an email account. Step one, what's your domain? Oh, I don't have one. Well, here you go, register one. And now you can set that up for workspaces. And I mean, I get that they can tightly integrate these things. It's all API driven anyways, but it's sort of a weird move. Like, could you imagine Azure or AWS saying we're going to sell off our Route 53 service? Like, it just makes no sense to me that, for a fundamental cloud thing like this would be not part of your business.
Yeah, I mean, I use it personally, and I have probably like 20, 30 domains registered in there that I'll probably now move elsewhere, probably just directly to AWS, Route 53. Just ease of use and everything else that, I've been using it for years. It auto renews. It's nice, clean. It was just easy and simple to use. And now being another third party to go log into and manage, I just not going to want to deal with it.
Well, I mean, I would hope that it would still be relatively seamless from inside the Google control panel, but they didn't tell us that in the announcement either. So, maybe they have some room to help us on this again, because you're right. If it's just like Elasticsearch, you're buying a third party and it's all integrated cleanly and I don't have to go to a different console, maybe it's not the end of the world. But it definitely, it sends the wrong message. And I think it just hurts them even more in the market when they're trying to go after enterprise sales, when they just prove they'll sell off a major business unit. 10 million domains at $30 a piece is a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of wondered what the margins are on something like that. It's all automated. It's been automated for decades. So what's the problem? Like, I really don't understand what the motivation was. I mean, sharpening. What was the terminology they used? Greater focus on sharpening our products and things. How they would see domain registration as a distraction from cloud business is I don't know, kind of beyond me slightly.
It just feels so easy to do. Then now you're selling it off and having to do integrations and whatnot. Like you said, it's probably all automated at this point. No one really touches it most of the time, but you really need to be doing.
Yeah. I mean, this isn't the DNS service itself, which would be, I think a bigger deal. Like, this is just the registration. So it's not like they're getting rid of that part of it, but it feels fundamental. And not having it makes me respect them less. I mean, Oracle doesn't have this either. And I sort of look at Oracle like a side eye until they bought, I think they bought somebody not too long ago. They didn't have this for a long time either. I couldn't see Oracle throwing theirs away.
Now I'm just double checking the back of my head that Azure actually has a domain registrar.
I think they do. I mean, I know if they have DNS services, but yeah, maybe not.
Yeah, I know they have DNS. No, you can buy a domain.
Yeah, use Azure as a domain registrar for a domain currently registered somewhere else. Yep, you can. Yep, they do.
Yeah. Yep. Just making sure, because I don't use it at work, but just wanted to double check.
Have you been waiting months and months to hire your new AWS, GCP, or Azure architect, only to have them be poached at the 11th hour by a startup with a juice bar? Initiatives stalled because you're having trouble hiring? Well, I have a simple solution: Foghorn Consulting. Foghorn Consulting provides top-notch cloud engineers to the world's most innovative companies and can be burning down your DevOps and cloud backlogs as soon as next week. Foghorn certified AWS, GCP, and Azure professionals are armed with infrastructure as code, and from day one will be designing performant, optimized cloud-native or hybrid environments that deliver on the promise of cloud. Their FogOps solution even provides on-demand cloud engineering to augment your existing teams. Visit www.foghornconsulting.com or send an email to cloudtalentnow@foghornconsulting.com and tell them the CloudPod sent you. Your dedicated FogOps team is with you for the long haul, and they bring their own juice.
Well, in the if you can't beat them, join them book, Google is formally accusing Microsoft of being a monopolist by trapping people in its clouds. Google has been beat up recently by the FTC, has now turned the tables and is complaining that Microsoft users' software licensing restrictions keep customers locked into its cloud computing services. The letter specifically takes issue with Microsoft using its Windows Server and Office products to keep clients on Azure, and that Microsoft Control is a national security risk. Google has raised similar concerns to EU regulators, essentially Microsoft charging third-party cloud providers extra on its software, a cost that customers do not bear if they run on the same software as Microsoft's Azure's cloud platform. So this is SQL Server. This has led to a RFC on how business practices for cloud computing providers by the FTC. And there's been many conversations and submissions for this type of concern. So we'll see what the government does, if anything, to maybe regulate some of our cloud providers.
It's a kind of a weird conversation because the free market's the free market. The business should be free to set the prices they charge for any product for any customer. I mean, if you think about enterprise discount agreements, anything like that is a mechanism to provide different pricing to different customers based on usage of either one resource or combinations of resources and things. So on one hand, I'm like, they should be able to charge whatever they like to whoever they like, and the market will figure things out. On the other hand, it is such a monopolistic position to be in. I'm not sure.
But at the same point, Microsoft's also trying to make a lot more of their products run on lighter weight. Think .NET Core, Microsoft SQL now runs on Linux. So some of the licensing of just the general Windows OS is going away. Obviously, SQL is just still expensive.
Yeah, I think that the thing that kind of rubs me the wrong way a little bit is the non-portability licenses. You know, if you've bought a license to run SQL Server on X many cores, then I believe that should be portable to anywhere, whether it's on-prem or any cloud. That's what I have a problem with more than the pricing arrangements.
Yeah, the other fun part about that article, at least as I was reading through it, was on one hand, they're turning to the U.S. government saying Microsoft controls all this. It's a national security risk. On the other hand, they're turning to the EU and saying, look what Microsoft's doing. I'm like, feels like you're having, you're like, let's see who we can yell at, get them to yell at Microsoft. Let's telling everyone.
The EU regulators have a pretty good track record of fining both Google and Microsoft for doing things like this. So we'll kind of see.
Yeah, well, and they've already been fining them for some of the stuff, and that's why they did the recent EU changes for the licensing terms, right? So some of the things that Google is complaining about, they've actually fixed for local EU vendors. So just an interesting way forward. Well, I was disappointed we didn't come up with a title around exemplars, but the trace exemplars are now available in managed services for Prometheus. And all I can think of is StarCraft. When I hear exemplars and Prometheus, I think of aliens. So it's a good combination in general. But basically, cross-signal correlation, where metrics, logs, and traces work together in concert to provide a full view of your system's health, is often cited as the holy grail of observability. However, given the fundamental differences in their data models, these signals usually live in separate, isolated backends. Pivoting between signal types can be laborious, and with no natural pointers or links between your different observability. Trace exemplars provide cross-signal correlation between your metrics and your traces, allowing you to identify and zoom in on individual users who experience abnormal application performance. Storing the trace information with metric data lets you quickly identify the traces associated with a sudden change in metric values, and you don't have to manually cross-reference trace information and metric data by using timestamps to identify what happened in an application where the metric data was recorded. And of course, Google is making this available to you in the managed service for Prometheus with support for the Prometheus exemplars. And now you can play with these in your implementation today.
Go on, Matt. You've got something cool to say. I can tell.
No, it just was like, reading it, kind of, decompressing it, and understanding all of it. It's as things become more serverless, and everything kind of becomes in its own like little areas, tracking everything and tracking requests in and all the different pieces that go through your system, has been a problem, and that's why AWS came out with X-Ray and APIMS and, all these other, things exist. So it's just another, way to do a lot of the same things. It's nice that it's integrated into Prometheus. If you're running your own stacks of Prometheus and Grafana, it'll be nice to be able to do it all in one place versus, having to use different tools for different aspects of your monitoring solution.
Yeah, that's fair. I was just going to pimp
Was
out.
that cool enough?
I was just going to pimp out TCP talks things. I feel like we've discussed logging and observability and
We've talked to a lot of vendors, but the one that you're thinking of is Honeycomb, I believe, is the one that has kind of the closest product to this, where they help you, identify in a widely distributed system and a widely horizontally and vertically scaled system where those issues are happening. And so that's a great one that we did that interview with Peter at reInvent on TCP Talks. Fantastic. All right, let's move on to Azure. Apparently you enterprises want to feed all of your data and queries into OpenAI ChatGPT with Azure and see the results. And Azure OpenAI service is now making that available to you and eliminates the need for training of fine-tuning of your own generative AI model. A user can fire off a query to Azure. Microsoft Cloud figures out what internal corporate data is needed, and the data is combined with the public data set and returned to the user. Models are managed by Microsoft in its cloud, preventing OpenAI from having direct access to the customer data, queries, and output. And basically, they wanted us to know they're not available to other customers. They're not available to OpenAI. They're not used to improve OpenAI models, and they're not used to improve any Microsoft or third-party products or services. And they're not used for automatically improving Azure OpenAI models for your use in your resources. The models are all stateless unless you explicitly fine-tune models within your training data. So if you've been worried about how to use ChatGPT or OpenAI services, Azure is your go-to place to get the best of both worlds.
I'm still always hesitant about giving other people corporate secrets. If they are truly that secret, really giving them away to any third party always makes me hesitant. I mean, at one point though, if you're using Azure and probably storing it in blob storage or anything else like that, it's already, they already own it one way or the other.
We talked last week about Google telling their own employees not to use generative AI, especially Bard for coding. I wonder if Microsoft would do the same thing.
Microsoft don't use any of ChatGPT, anything along those lines. They disable all the Copilot plugins on all their integrations.
Yeah, I wonder what data is used for. I mean, yeah. Whenever I see a list of 5 knots, I'm like, well, what are the 5 things you are going to do? A lawyer wrote that. I know a lawyer wrote that.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely some interesting use cases for these type of things. I was hearing about a company the other day called Glean, which uses AI search and knowledge discovery for your corporate internet. Like I think Kendra, but on steroids. And so there's definitely, I can see the advantage of having an AI LLM model in place to help you do these things. But the data privacy is the biggest issue in all this. And I kind of agree with Matt. If it's secret, don't put it anywhere that you don't trust it or don't control the endpoints. And maybe cloud isn't right for you for that particular use case, but it's hard to say.
I've been looking recently about what would be required to run a large language model locally. A lot of money.
Were you looking at the Databricks LLM model, or are you looking at a different one?
I was looking at one of the Facebook Llama model, actually, the 13 billion parameter model. And I have some pretty beefy graphics cards here at home, but they don't have enough RAM. And I think the NVIDIA A100 or something with 24 or 32 gig of RAM, it runs several $1,000s. So although it is my birthday coming up, I don't think you expect to get one of those.
Probably not getting one of those.
Everyone that's listening to the podcast asks, want to help fund Jonathan to get one of those cards?
Like if an A1000 were to fall off a truck outside your house, you wouldn't cry. I get it.
I would not. No.
Not only is Azure trying to be cutting edge in OpenAI and chat generative AI, they're also trying to break the bank with quantum computing. So this will be your place to burn all of your monies at Azure someday in the future. And they had a couple announcements I thought was interesting around the quantum side. First of all, they wanted to let you know that they have completed the first milestone towards achieving a quantum supercomputer. They can now create and control Majorna quasi-particles. But I don't know what those are, but they sound cool to say. Majorna quasi-particles. They also have a new Azure Quantum Elements, which accelerate scientific discovery by integrating the latest breakthroughs in HPC, AI, and quantum computing. And the most important one is the Copilot for Azure Quantum, with scientists can accomplish complex tasks on top of the fabric of cloud supercomputing, advanced AI, and quantum, all integrated with the tools they use today. And all I can think of is between ChatGPT and Azure Quantum, this is where Skynet's coming from.
I hadn't really considered that we could use these generative AI tools to actually write code for quantum computers. Actually, that's very useful to know, because it's such a weird and limited language. And we talked years ago about IBM, and they have simulations online that you can log into and play with and do things. But sort of getting from a business idea to code to actually writing something that runs on a quantum computer is a massive step that requires mathematicians and very smart people. And actually be able to abstract that and have Copilot write that code for you is super interesting.
I would have gone with terrifying, but interesting also works.
I don't know. It's not my area. All right. And then our final Azure story this week. Azure has a new network observability add-on for AKS that will scrape useful metrics from Kubernetes workloads and emit actionable networking observability data into industry standard Prometheus format that should be visualized with Grafana. Key benefits to you, the customer, is get access to node-level network metrics like packet drops, connection stats, and more. Support for all Azure CNIs. Support all AKS node types, including Linux and Windows. Easily deployment using native Azure tools, and a seamless integration with the Azure Managed Prometheus and Azure Managed Grafana offerings.
I'm all burned out on logs now.
These are networking logs. These are different.
I just assumed that this was already built in at this point. To me, a lot of these things are, just a little bit more day one things that I expect to be in a platform. And, that's in public preview means that they're still not even ready to go live with it.
The thing I find strange is that we even need these tools anymore. I get, you have data center, bare metal. Yes, you want those kind of metrics. Now we've got virtualization. Now we have virtualization metrics. Now we've got containerization, and now we need all those same metrics. It's like every layer we build on top of something, we generate this same stuff. People always care about the network.
Because there's times that it's still a problem. Not speaking from recent history.
Yeah.
Outages are outages. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to our Cloud Journey series. I will say that I'm going to be at the Finops X conference later this week. I will report back next week. But this is an article I saw about Finops from the field, how to build a Finops roadmap. And this is from Google Cloud. And that's maybe a good conversation. So, for you guys have both had to deal with cloud costs out of control, especially in this economy. People get mad. What are some of your thoughts around adopting Finops, and what are some of the things that you're looking at defining a roadmap to Finops? And yes, you can use the Google guide to cheat if you like.
I mean, I can start. I recently started, a new day job, and kind of working through. First thing I did was kind of just took a look at the bill, and kind of my way was let's look at where we think the costs are versus what the bill costs are. So kind of just some initial chats with different people in the company and seeing, hey, where do we think the cost should be versus the reality of where the costs were, and then kind of started to dive into details there. Of going, we think that, all of our, costs should be, in blob storage, but in reality, all of our costs is over here in compute. What's going on? Why is it not in the right locations? And then kind of dive deeper into it. As I go through this, I always try to look at what the business impact of what we are actually doing. So sure, might be able to save 20% here, but are we increasing the risk of anything, of business outages, any negative effects to the business that we might need to set up. So those are kind of my first couple steps as I kind of approach this.
I like thinking about not just where we're wasting money, but why we're wasting money and how we're wasting money, and what is it that got to that place where the finance is knocking your door and saying, you said the budget was going to be this much, but we're 50% over, by the end of the year at this rate. So I think one of the things that I'd focus on, it would be processes and tooling, and figuring out, well, why do we end up with all these objects in object store that we don't need or want anymore? Or why do we have all these instances stood up that no one's responsible for? It's been up for 3 years and Bob left the company 24 months ago kind of thing. Like, why do we end up in this position, and what do we need to do to stop that from happening?
Yeah. It's interesting, you mentioned that you ask people what it should cost, and I find that to be cute because I always ask that question and they always look at me like, well, that's your question to answer. So I'm impressed that people answer that for you, Matt. I'm going to try your technique. I'm going to bring you to the next meeting and be like, hey, will you ask the question? Because they apparently answer you.
Oh, it's not, I guess, where should we be spending money, but what is the most, intensive, or what's your gut? Coming into a new organization, my question was always, where do we think we should be spending it? Is it SQL? Is it, load balancers? Where in our environment is it? Where is, the most heavy use of the cloud, and then kind of from there. And I've done many cloud cost assessments over, at prior day jobs, so I kind of like, that's always where I look is, a brief conversation and then kind of start to look at the bill. Once, you kind of can whack a lot of the easy ones off, like, hey, we have this blob storage account, or these instances that just are running in an account that nobody knows about. That's costing us several thousands of dollars per day. From there, I jump into where I guess normally where Jonathan then approaches, how do we get here and how do we make sure it doesn't? And, if we got here, why do we get here? Oh, somebody in security told us we had to enable audit logs. Cool. Can we put a limit on it? Do we need to retain them forever? Or is anybody going to ever have use for 15 terabytes a day of growth of SQL audit logs? Kind of start asking those questions.
I mean, you have to for compliance. So it's kind of fun things.
I've definitely got that answer before.
Yeah, it happens all the time. So I think you guys are both kind of off to the right start here. In the Google model, in their steps, they talk about first defining your stakeholders, which is your CCOE, which we've talked about a lot if you have one. Engineering team is a stakeholder, your platform team is a stakeholder, the business, and of course your accountants and finance team, who are the people yelling at you probably that you need a FinOps practice because the costs are out of control. But that's really kind of step one. And then step two is really going into, defining what FinOps is going to be for your team. Is it tools and accelerators? Is it planning and forecasting? Is it driving cost optimization? Is it getting accountability and enablement, or is it measurement and realization? And then the really nice thing about this, we just touched on a bunch of these things, is, what are the 7 core capabilities of a FinOps practice? And that's really cost allocation, reporting, pricing efficiency, architectural efficiency, training and enablement, incentivization, and accountability. And the nice thing about this particular Google piece is that they actually give you a crawl, walk, run for each of those. So if I were to scroll on down here to architectural efficiency, and I were to look at crawl, it basically says architectural efficiency hasn't been considered during migrations or in running workloads. The walking level is architectural efficiency is defined through cost awareness architectures, and there are clear standards based on workload types and specific products. And then running is architectural efficiency is defined through a set of cost-aware architecture design patterns, and engineering teams comprehensively implement optimizations of workloads throughout the organization with little or no prompting required. So they give you a really nice kind of guide through this process, which I really, really actually like in their article.
Yeah, and a lot of the FinOps stuff is always, it's continuous.
Any other thoughts on creating your FinOps practice? And if you're looking for a lot more about this, of course, FinOps X is this week for those of you who are in the FinOps Foundation. I'm sure we'll have lots more to talk about FinOps next week when I come back from the conference.
The only last comment is, while, people like to think of this as a one-time thing, this is really an ongoing thing. You're perpetually going to be, in the crawl, walk, run, and always be improving state. And whether you are building it out from scratch or, already in that process, there's always going to be improvements that you can do. And this isn't, something that you do once and you're done with it.
Agreed. All right, gentlemen, it's fantastic to be back. Glad to see you both, as always. And I'll see you guys next week here in the cloud.
See you later.
Enjoy the conference.
And that is the Week in Cloud. We'd like to thank our sponsor, Foghorn Consulting. Subscribe on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts, and tweet us your feedback at #TheCloudPod. Or join our Slack channel. Go to our website, thecloudpod.net, for sign-up instructions.